The lover's knot tiara, initially presented to her in 2015 by Queen Elizabeth II, is far more than a token of appreciation. It integrates her directly into a living lineage of iconic women, linking her implicitly to Queen Mary and Princess Diana. Every public outing transforms into a visual reminder of institutional survival, as if her final spot in the history books is already being softly drafted long before she officially ascends the throne. Her public persona is not rushed, but meticulously cultivated, anchored in global anticipation. When she stands before the cameras wearing historic heirlooms, the underlying memo is not just respect for custom, but absolute readiness, as though the firm is actively sculpting a persona that will one day encapsulate the entire institution. Queen Camilla's narrative unspools through a fundamentally different type of memory. Prior to her formal entry into the household, public sentiment surrounded her with immense friction and hostility, but over the passing decades, she clawed her way into a status defined by persistence, resilience, and ultimate acceptance. Her selected gems, including specific sapphire heirlooms tightly bound to Queen Elizabeth II, dating back to 1947, echo a deep historical archive. They are not merely dazzling fashion choices, but inherited tokens of sovereign authority handed down through institutional obligation. What she showcases mirrors a personal arc defined by sheer stamina, where validation was won slowly and methodically, rather than granted through birthright. Every single appearance reinforces a profound sense of ultimate arrival, earned via decades of service rather than passive inheritance. When viewed side by side, the dichotomy becomes glaring without a single word being uttered. One matriarch mirrors a future already guaranteed by destiny. The other mirrors a position carved out and solidified through lived experience. Camilla embodies institutional permanence secured through age and survival, while Catherine embodies a grand destiny waiting right over the horizon. In joint palace appearances, absolutely nothing needs to be articulated out loud. The media cameras do not merely record fabric or precious stones, they record deep subtext layered in total silence. Even stillness transforms into a component of the message, dictating how the international audience interprets continuity, power, and the quiet authority of the crown across generations. Inside a grand room bathed in crystal light, where every single gesture is pre-planned, Catherine's serene composure remained completely unbothered, despite the subtle tectonic movements of power occurring around her. But what hidden currents were quietly changing the room's energy, and how did this flawlessly engineered elegance begin to mask a profound institutional shift no guest could openly speak of? Let us uncover the fascinating reality. Catherine rules the ballroom with silent authority. Beneath the massive crystal chandeliers hanging over the grand ballroom, order appeared completely effortless, yet absolutely nothing in that space relied on coincidence. What looked fluid from a distance was a social architecture constructed from rigorous planning, split-second timing, and tightly regulated movement, where every single entrance and conversational pause bore weight far beyond mere etiquette. In that highly charged environment, Catherine navigated the space with absolute self-assurance, her cadence unbothered by the covert reorganizations occurring all around her. She hosted international dignitaries with total warmth, her facial expression completely stable, as if the shifting internal dynamics possessed zero power over her peace of mind. Without utilizing force or making loud declarations, she mutated into the central point toward which the entire room naturally gravitated, pulling ambassadors and senior politicians into her personal circle, as though the crowd had collectively voted on her supremacy beforehand. Nearby, Prince William stayed close by, not as a passive escort, but as structural support, smoothly shifting his positioning whenever media cameras or state representatives altered their path. His physical presence created an invisible barrier of defense, ensuring she was never left visually isolated or vulnerable. In every single snapshot captured by the press, his closeness bolstered a feeling of dynastic survival, as though the future of the crown had already positioned itself quietly right behind her shoulder. Yet the distribution of global focus was by no means balanced. Camilla, matching her in poise and completely dedicated to her official duties, discovered her own journey through the evening punctuated by quiet, systematic interruptions. Introductions materialized at highly calculated intervals, palace aides stepped in with polite diversions, and every single opportunity to anchor herself within the most high-profile circles dissolved into courteous redirection. Nothing was explicitly blocked, yet nothing remained permanently anchored in her favor. The physical room itself, perhaps mirroring past high-profile events inside locations like Windsor back in 2024, appeared to naturally remember internal rankings without needing to articulate them. Physical movement stood in for explicit instructions, and spatial placement evolved into the most impactful power dynamic in the palace. Even the press corps reacted by naturally pivoting their lenses, as if guided by raw survival instinct rather than official orders. Catherine's immense visibility expanded not through aggressive pursuit of the spotlight, but through natural human convergence, as clusters of high-level discussion effortlessly crystallized around her person. She stayed completely unhurried, permitting the grand evening to organize itself around her presence rather than desperately hunting for attention. Meanwhile, the outer perimeters of the grand room quietly widened for alternative figures, establishing a social distance that was never officially proclaimed, but intensely felt by everyone. No singular action defined this transformation. There were zero elevated arguments, no open friction, merely the gradual, glacial rearrangement of physical space and human eyesight. What materialized was an intense contrast generated entirely by strategic placement. One individual increasingly pushed to the absolute center, another systematically shifted to the background, both maintaining flawless decorum within a palace environment that values positioning just as much as presence itself. By the time the gala began to wind down toward its conclusion, the historic ballroom no longer felt like a singular stage, but an active map of raw influence, mapped out in real time, where pure visibility had turned into the most silent manifestation of supreme authority, and every step had already selected its ultimate meaning long before the foot ever hit the floor. All of this materializing without a single press release, yet completely understood by every single person in attendance. Catherine's reemergence into the public eye has been defined by quietness, symbolism, and highly selective public appearances, with each distinct tiara mirroring a deeper phase of her personal transformation. But what do these crown jewels truly reveal regarding her path since 2011, and how is each public outing quietly rewriting the narrative of the future queen consort? Let us discover the answers. A diadem of legacy and quiet authority. The overarching narrative surrounding the future queen consort is sculpted not just by grand galas and ancient custom, but additionally by total silence, allegorical symbols, and the crushing echo of history displayed out in the open. Since the year 2024, the Princess of Wales, Catherine, has stepped back into public palace life with a deeply calculated, measured presence that feels simultaneously disciplined and intensely powerful. At the absolute core of this revived public profile sits a singular physical object that quietly defines continuity and evolution within the House of Windsor, the royal tiara. Her personal path since tying the knot with Prince William back in 2011 has been defined by 4 highly specific diadems, each mirroring a distinct layer of personal meaning and institutional identity. The Cartier Hilo piece initially introduced her to the weight of royal symbolism on her wedding day in London, providing a gentle introduction to global expectation and heritage. The lotus flower tiara, observed at subsequent official receptions, reinforced her placement within a highly modernized image of the crown that persistently adjusts. The Strathmore Rose, showcased during a historic state banquet for leaders from Seoul in 2023, quietly honored the legacy of the Queen Mother. Yet the iconic lover's knot continues to be the most debated heirloom on Earth, passed down through eras from Queen Mary to Queen Elizabeth II and later to Princess Diana. It embodies global adoration and immense tragedy simultaneously, a delicate bridge spanning romance, public obligation, and memory. As Catherine's institutional footprint expanded during her full return to work in 2025, her visual styling turned softer, her facial expressions much more natural, and even her personal relationship to historic diadems pivoted toward relaxed individuality rather than rigid adherence to ancient rules. While the global public fixated on high fashion and elegance, a completely different, much quieter plotline was unfolding inside the palace walls, centered on social distance, deliberate exclusion, and covert administrative decisions. After an extensive internal operational review, Laura Lopez encountered
A jaw-dropping royal event has sent shockwaves through palace commentators and sparked intense arguments across the globe. Lenses captured an astonishing sight as Princess Catherine made her entrance, looking magnificent, wearing a diadem intimately tied to the inheritance of the late monarch, a treasure countless individuals assumed would stay locked away for only the most monumental dates. As rumors raced through courtier networks and every component is scrutinized, a single inquiry rules the debate. Was this merely a high fashion moment or a deliberate declaration regarding the destiny of the crown? But what is your opinion? Was Princess Catherine paying tribute to the late sovereign's memory or announcing a brand new palace epoch? Post your perspectives in the comment section below. To support our channel in producing more content and exposing the freshest palace updates, please hit the subscribe button. Princess Catherine's impactful royal comeback. A solitary public outing can occasionally communicate more than months of newspaper stories, and that was precisely the case when the Princess of Wales walked into the majestic staterooms of Windsor Castle for a dazzling official dinner welcoming the visiting head of state from France. The evening was organized to honor international relations, yet it wasn't long before all focus locked onto a solitary figure whose appearance told a tale far grander than the dinner itself. For numerous people in attendance, the most breathtaking component was not the sophisticated scarlet dress or the glittering gems that reflected under the chandelier lights. It was the undeniable reality that Catherine was present. Following an extended absence from the public eye, her arrival felt less like basic participation and more like a monumental proclamation. The woman who had endured one of the most trying phases of her existence had stepped back onto one of the crown's most prestigious platforms. The gravity of that split second extended far past style choices. In the months that followed her final major palace duties toward the end of 2023, Catherine withdrew from public view to focus entirely on her medical recovery. Intestinal surgery, a shocking oncology diagnosis, and a punishing schedule of preventative care required her to step away from the obligations that had historically shaped her public identity. While palace engagements proceeded in her absence, endless queries, deep concern, and intense excitement met every single bulletin regarding her health journey. When she later opened up about the ordeal, she described a path that had challenged her household in ways very few onlookers could comprehend. Existence, she noted, can alter in a heartbeat, leaving even the most resilient souls hunting for a route through the darkness. Those reflections lingered in the collective memory long after they were broadcast, ensuring her eventual return felt profoundly intimate to millions who had cheered on her battle. That is precisely why her grand entrance at Windsor Castle on the evening of July 8, 2025, held such immense emotional weight. Adorned with the legendary Queen Mary's lover's knot tiara, a historic heirloom permanently tied to sovereign history and once treasured by Diana, Princess of Wales, Catherine seemed to merge history and destiny in a single, unforgettable snapshot. The selection of jewelry, matched with a gown styled by the exact creative mind behind her bridal dress, appeared deeply premeditated, overflowing with historical code and tribute. By that date, she had already made public the conclusion of her chemotherapy routine and later validated that she had achieved full remission. Yet observing her confidently re-enter a demanding calendar of sovereign duties turned those text updates into undeniable fact. The state dinner thrown by King Charles III and Queen Camilla evolved into something much larger than a diplomatic protocol. It turned into the grand stage for one of the most moving sovereign returns in modern history. Following months of speculation, Catherine didn't merely show up, she walked in with a serene certitude, carrying centuries of history on her brow and unmatched endurance in every movement, showing the populace that specific palace moments are immortalized not because of the value of the gems, but because of the massive mountain climbed to wear them. The media lenses caught every angle of that Windsor Castle state reception, yet a single lightning-fast interaction between Queen Camilla and Catherine, Princess of Wales, completely overshadowed the surrounding luxury. What truly transpired during that brief look, and why did it ignite a global firestorm despite the event's refinement and meticulously planned choreography? Let us pull back the curtain on these staggering dynamics. Camilla caught on digital camera. The press photographers overlooked practically nothing that night, but one specific frame instantly gripped global fascination. As prominent dignitaries congregated inside the walls of Windsor Castle for the highly heralded French state reception, millions of onlookers watched every movement as it unfolded live. It was a night steeped in ancient custom, grandeur, and deep subtext, yet a fleeting moment involving Queen Camilla and Catherine, Princess of Wales, would rapidly transform into the most analyzed photograph of the weekend. Positioned at the head of the magnificent state feast sat Queen Camilla alongside King Charles III, styled in a refined alabaster gown and decorated with breathtaking classic sapphire gems. The shimmering heirlooms she displayed possessed a lineage tracking back multiple generations. Chief among them was the renowned Belgian sapphire tiara, paired with a coordinating necklace and band once cherished by Queen Elizabeth II. Those exact sapphires were part of a historic wedding collection gifted to the young princess back in 1947, rendering them far more than simple sparkling accessories. They signified lineage, memorial, and the core of sovereign identity. Yet regardless of how regal Camilla's presentation appeared, the room's energy pivoted the exact second Catherine crossed the threshold. Showcasing the legendary lover's knot tiara, a historic heirloom forever anchored to Diana, Princess of Wales, Catherine instantly became the target of endless camera flashes. The diadem has long been paired with one of the most worshipped icons in modern palace history, and its presence on Catherine bore massive symbolic significance. In a flash, two prominent royal figures stood visually linked to two entirely different chapters of the crown's ongoing narrative. What happened next rapidly transformed into the core of international analysis. Video broadcasts seemed to capture Camilla's instinctive reaction as Catherine made her entrance, lasting only a split second but serving as plenty of fuel to ignite feverish theory. Observers replayed the clip over and over, hunting for hidden signals in a subtle facial tic that was never addressed by palace spokespeople. Some viewed it as quiet respect for Catherine's poise and elegance, highlighting how effortlessly she wore the historic piece. Others asserted it reflected a deep acknowledgment of Diana's unwavering footprint, which persistently impacts the public perception of the current household. A few critics hinted that it pointed to the complicated personal friction that still lingers within the court's inner circle. The global obsession was entirely logical given the background. For decades, Camilla's journey towards widespread public affection had been intensely scrutinized, defined by a slow, methodical evolution into a respected senior royal figure. Catherine, on the other hand, had smoothly ascended to become one of the most universally adored modern pillars of the firm, permanently linked with continuity, grace, and institutional calm. Their joint appearance that night offered a spectacular visual juxtaposition between yesterday and tomorrow, established ritual and ongoing transition, memory and reinvention. By the time the state banquet wrapped up on July 8, 2025, the online discourse had already blanketed global news programs, print journals, and social feeds across the earth. Whether that specific recorded look exposed genuine praise, deep introspection, or an entirely private thought remains a mystery. What is undeniable is that a single fleeting glance mutated an already monumental night into one of the most analyzed sovereign snapshots of the decade. What is it about Princess Catherine showcasing the legendary lover's knot tiara that instantly paralyzes a room? And why does this ancient masterpiece carry so profound psychological gravity across generations of palace matriarchs, representing not merely luxury, but an underlying chronicle of victory, sorrow, and unyielding crown tradition? Let us explore. Catherine and the legendary lover's knot tiara. The split-second Princess Catherine enters an environment showcasing the historic lover's knot tiara, the room's focus shifts immediately. It's not merely the brilliance of the diamonds that grabs the observer, it's the intense history resting on her brow, a narrative threaded through eras of sovereign women, monumental events, private victories, and chapters of deep grief. Very few items of jewelry in palace records command such profound resonance, which is why many experts view it as much more than a priceless ornament. To countless royal watchers, it functions as a breathing tie to yesterday. Long before Catherine became identified with the piece, it had already carved its name deep into the crown's archives. Commissioned in 1913 by the celebrated House of Gerard for Queen Mary, the accessory was modeled after an older heirloom once owned by her maternal ancestor, Princess Augusta of Hesse. Fixed on honoring that beloved design, Queen Mary ordered a new iteration and even dismantled portions of her personal jewelry collection to bring it to life. The final product was a triumph that fused clan tradition with majestic beauty. Throughout the decades, the diadem quietly observed the slow transformation of the crown. It decorated sovereign leaders during some of the most critical eras in modern British history, turning into an anchor of stability during phases of upheaval. When Queen Mary passed away in 1953, the treasured item was passed down to Queen Elizabeth II.